Yo, welcome back guys. In today's video, we're going to be learning from some pros on how we can qualify and make earnings in the new Duo Victory Cups. So first of all, let's talk about drop spots and off spawn because it's obviously the foundation for the rest of your game. So the map's obviously a lot smaller and there's a lot of dead space outside the POIs, unlike last season where you had sort of OXR bases that actually had just as good loot. So that now means everyone is basically just landing at the POIs because split drops aren't that feasible. If we look at this game, the one team that done a split drop will actually see what loot they are landing on. You can see they're only landing on 8 chests, so they're going to be shambles compared to a team that lands at a POI, especially if they get it uncon. I know this doesn't sound great for the passive teams that like to land at split drops because if they land a POI, they're likely to get thought of spawn and end up dying. However, there's a method called splitting POIs where you get just as good loot, but you still avoid fights. So the first step to doing this is choosing the right POIs. Basically, you want to land somewhere with lots of buildings. For example, Burns Manor would be really bad because there's only one building, so it's more of a 50-50 drop. Whereas if you go to the terrace, it's going to be very good because there's a lot of buildings you can land and basically split the POI. It's then like a game of chess. If you have the better drops, your opponent's more likely to swerve, apart from the psychos that will contest you, but if you have better drops, you're likely to clean them up. So if they swerve off, you get priority on the better loot to get the loot advantage. So like you could land these buildings here that give the ham and more chests. Whereas if they have the better drops, you're better just to sort of land away from them because they're going to have the loot advantage and you obviously don't want to fight anyway. It's still important where you land though. For example, if you landed here, you can basically cut off their loot path and claim as much loot as possible because you could get this building whilst they are looting this and still be safe. Whereas if you got this later in the game, there's more chance that you would sort of cross paths with these and get into a fight, which you obviously don't want to do. You then want to make sure your loot path is as optimal as possible and you're basically only looting in one direction and not coming back on yourself. For example, if you went to this building after, you then wouldn't want to go back here because you're basically coming back on yourself. So instead, you would do this and go to that building first and then here. And then here to make sure you're leaving your drop as early as possible and getting priority on rotations from like guys like this. You basically want to know where you're going to exit. So if I want to go north, I know this building here is going to be my last building to loot. So I would basically just plan my loot path off that. So maybe I would go here, here and then exit up north. Or you can do the opposite and play storm, but you don't want to be like these teams where you do rotate to zone but you're late and then you end up in all this congestion. So either rotate early and get priority and get there before everyone else, or just play storm and go in later when you've basically got 3 rotates. I would advise against this playstyle a bit less in finals because obviously you do not want to take any storm damage because obviously you're going to get storm sickness and you won't be able to play the heal off, which I think a lot of the final games are going to go to. But in the open games where a lot of players are going to be looking to keep for the healing points, I think it's definitely a valid strat to basically avoid fights. And if you guys watched any of the VOD reviews on Peter, Bot and Teeny's solo final wins, you'll know that the benefit of playing storm is if you sort of do it in up until the 4th going into 5th zone, you can basically stay in storm and have a chance of pulling zone like this. So as we can see, Scroll and Sky have basically pulled zone and now they're completely in dead side. They've now got this whole part of zone that's in storm free that they can sort of like rotate back to Burns Manor and sort of refarm some loot if they needed to. Whereas if you could see, everyone else on the congested side is fully screwed. So it's the same for these guys who are even deeper into zone. They know the previous zone was here, so there's going to be a lot of congestion up in this area here. So what they're going to do is they'll just now be able to rotate basically into this dead side here and basically avoid all this congestion up in the north area. And one of these players was actually a solo, and now because he's in zone in this dead side, he's going to be able to reboot his teammate. And obviously if he went to Krusty or Power Plant to do this, they would just both get eliminated instantly. So if you ever need to reboot, make sure you go deep into zone where there's going to be sort of as little as players as possible. So I now want to talk about people's loadouts and how these are going to differentiate quite drastically between opens and these final lobbies in the Victory Cups. So these Evel Cups are quite stacked games and they're going to replicate final lobbies. And as you can see, people's loadout, they've got a lot of Mr. Blassies, inventory rifles and silent pistols instead of like the striker ARs and SMGs. So these are obviously going to be better for Surge, and it's why a lot of people are carrying them in these type of lobbies. Whereas in opens, when you're going to be taking more fights and stuff like that, then obviously you can then sort of run the SMG blinkies and faster firing rate ARs. So obviously there's been quite a big meta change. My video alone, and I know lots of others sort of covered the OP fishing meta, where you fish in open water and basically get an unlimited source of rotation in the blinky fish. But they've obviously since patched that. So I think this season, like unless they add anything new, I think we are going to be quite struggling for rotation. Obviously the blinky fish is only a free stack and you can't use them on each other. So I think people are going to run out of rotation really quick, and there's going to be a lot of sort of manual rotates. So I was quite interested to see here, Asa and Podosai only have one blinky fish between them. So it's quite interesting to see how they sort of work this. Are they going to sort of just not use it and rotate together, or what's the play here? And interestingly enough, Asa just drops it to Podosai, and he just plays for his own life here. So he sort of gets in front, and then as you can see, Asa's on the backside and he's sort of manually rotating with the slushy, and then he actually goes down here because he's obviously a solo in a stat game rotating on his own. So Podosai, he basically sacrifices life so Podosai can live and try and go deeper into the game, which unfortunately he doesn't. It's obviously a tough situation to be in because basically two negatives you have to decide from. You either both stay together backside and both get scuffed, or one of you stays alive. But then obviously in these final lobbies, it's unlikely that a solo is going to go on to get the win, especially with all these pros in these games. So I think that's why earlier in the game, they went for a pre-edit play to basically get a refresh and hope they end up getting more blinky fish. They do get a nice refresh, made them more stacked with mats and stuff, but unfortunately he was also unstacked and didn't have any blinky fish. But I wanted to show you that because, like I said earlier, if getting refreshes is that easy in pro lobbies like this, then they're definitely going to work in your games. Basically anything like pre-edits or awareness checks in endgame against worse players is definitely going to be the easiest way for you to get refreshes. So you don't have to be like really aggressive in endgame. You literally just try swinging on someone's wall, and if they see you, then just don't go for it. So just keep trying this until it works. Like if you do it 10 times, one of them is going to work. If you do it one time, then it's probably not going to work. So just keep waiting for your opportunities, and yeah, someone's not going to be aware and it will lead to an easy refresh, and then hopefully you'll get more blinky fish and mats to go on to get deep placement in the game. We're now going to be switching over to our winning team because that's obviously what you're here for. You want to know how to win games in the stacked lobbies and obviously go and make earnings in the finals of the victory cups. Okay, so I wanted to go back to early game to see how they got the exotic Mr. Blasty and how they sort of got stacked for endgame, and it turns out the team I slated for the split drop is actually the team that went on to win the game. One thing I noticed immediately is obviously this player is able to get straight into farming his metal, and both players go up all the way to sort of 300 each. Obviously you wouldn't be able to do this as much in a PY because obviously if you're contested, if you're farming out like this, you could get beamed and stuff. So there is definitely a benefit of landing somewhere quieter like this. You can just get your metal straight away. And I always talk about this. The benefits of getting it off spawn as well is, well, one, on this map, there's not a lot of metal outside the POIs and your drop spot, but also the few places there were, like, and in previous seasons, say like the gas stations, the players that don't get it off spawn will always rotate into these locations, which means they're very congested. So if you're a team that goes to a gas station, there's very high chance that you're going to get into a fight. So I always highly recommend that you get your metal off spawn so you can just relax and chill in the mid game and just sort of prioritize other things like rotations and your surge. But then basically from there, nothing really happens until this point here. The team in front of them basically gets lobby focus and ends up going down. So basically from this, the reason I wanted to cover this is what actually leads to them going on to win the game. As you can see, they get the chug chug, but not only that, they get the crusty exotic Mr. Blasty. And I made a short on this and it's so incredibly strong. It's probably one of the most overpowered items we've ever seen. And you'll see why in a minute. This one weapon leads to them going on and getting the win. This is probably one of the biggest win conditions in these lobbies right now. So if crusty spawns near you, you should definitely be going for it. Or if you see a guy with it, you should definitely be trying to fight him because it's almost a guaranteed win. So let's see why it's so overpowered. So he basically tarps in front of zone, and because he's in quite a healthy position, he then starts looking up at height. He literally just shoots once. He doesn't even connect, but because this weapon doesn't need direct impact, you just shoot like builds underneath, on top. It basically sends the guy on height flying up into the air, and he's quickly eliminated within like a second. They can now go up themselves and claim high ground, which is the biggest sort of win condition in these games. So now it's basically a guaranteed win for them, because as you could see as well, maintaining it is going to be really easy because they've still got this weapon, and all they have to do is basically shoot down on the boxes below them, and it's going to attach balloons to people below them, and they're just going to be fully griefed. And this player is stacked for the heal off, even though it's probably not going to go to the heal off. I just want to talk about that as well. As you could see, there's only 6 players remaining. Obviously, in previous victory cups and these sort of stacked lobbies, they would always go to heal off, but now because of the lack of rotation, the lobbies are going to die out much quicker, and most games won't even go to the heal off. So you don't have to stress too much about carrying like loads of whites or anything like that. They get chopped down here, and as you can see, he's not even saving his chug splashes for the heal off. He's basically using them now, which is quite smart because they obviously don't want to die at this stage. He does go run into Storm for the early heal off, and then a player's sort of fighting him. Meanwhile, Milan's still basically trying to stay in Storm for as long as possible to obviously not get any Storm sickness. They then eventually get back together, and like I said, obviously normally it would go all the way down to the zone shrinking, but it doesn't even get to that. And as you can see, the players are fighting whilst the zone's still quite big. If you did enjoy, make sure to subscribe and turn on noties, as I've got way more Simpsons content coming this season. If you're still hungry for improvement content, make sure to watch this video of mine where I talk about what's the meta this season.